I was fired on a Thursday. Not just let go. I mean fired, humiliated in front of the entire R&D team by a man who had barely been with the company for a month. The new CEO, David Carlisle, stood in the middle of the lab I'd helped build from scratch, pointed at me like I was a dog who'd peed on the rug, and said, "You're done. Security will escort you out." I had just finalized the formula for what would become the most profitable drug in the company's history, a treatment for a rare neurological condition that had stumped even the biggest names in pharma. The formula had come from 6 years of obsession, missed birthdays, and nights spent sleeping on the floor of the lab. I didn't care about fame, or even the money. I wanted to change lives. And now, this man who didn't even know where the pipettes were kept, was throwing me out like I was some intern who messed up a coffee order. But here's what David didn't know. I never signed over the patent rights. And that changed everything. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the lab before the breakthrough, to the first time I even thought about walking away from it all. I had joined Valence Therapeutics straight out of grad school, back when it was nothing but an overpriced lease and a few whiteboards covered in pipe dreams. I was their first hire in biochemistry, not even 25 at the time, and I had one dream: create a drug that would give my older sister a chance at a normal life. She had a rare genetic disorder that caused uncontrollable seizures. The existing meds didn't help, and the side effects made her feel like a zombie. Watching her suffer every day lit something in me. I didn't want to fix the world. I just wanted to fix her. Valence gave me a shot. Small lab, low pay, but they believed in me. Or at least, the old CEO, Mr. Green, did. He was kind. He didn't understand half of what I said, but he always listened. He said, "If you can help one person walk again, we all win." For 5 years, I worked. Failed. Reworked. Failed again. But then came year 6, and something clicked. One morning at 2 a.m., I adjusted a single amino acid sequence in our formula. I wasn't expecting much. It was one of hundreds of tweaks I had made. But when I ran the tests on our cell lines, something was different. Consistent neuron stabilization. Reactions I'd never seen. I repeated it. Over and over. Same result. By morning, I knew I had it. The drug wasn't just promising, it worked. That same week, Mr. Green announced he was stepping down. He was sick. Pancreatic cancer. No one saw it coming. He was gone in a month. Then came David. He didn't smile. Ever. He came from a corporate background, not medicine. His first order of business was profit. Trim the fat, he said. And to him, research was fat. Compassion was fat. He barely looked at me during our first meeting. When I told him about the breakthrough, he said, "If it doesn't hit the market in 6 months, it's useless to me." That was my first warning. The second was when I noticed the accounting department had stopped filing my supply requests. The third came when my lab keycard stopped working at night. But still, I kept going. I wasn't going to let him ruin this. Not when we were so close. A week before he fired me, I walked into his office with the final test results. "This will save thousands," I said. "We need approval for the next phase." He flipped through the papers without reading them. Then he looked up and asked, "Did you file IP transfer forms?" I blinked. "What?" "The intellectual property. Did you sign the transfer documents Mr. Green left for everyone?" I hadn't. I remembered them being slipped under my door in a stack of onboarding junk 3 years ago. But I was too busy, and frankly, I didn't trust legal jargon. So, I'd never signed them. That moment, his eyes changed. And the next week, I was gone. But David made one fatal mistake. He assumed I was stupid. And that mistake was about to cost him everything. The walk out of the building was cold. Security didn't even let me grab my notes or personal lab coat. Just a cardboard box of desk junk, a coffee mug, some post-its, and a photo of me and my sister, Grace, from when we were kids. Her smile made me clench my jaw. David hadn't just fired me, he had tried to erase me. Like I never mattered. Like the last 6 years I gave to this company were a side note. But the truth is, I held the one thing that mattered, the drug formula. See, what David didn't realize, or maybe didn't care enough to look into, was that I had always kept a copy of the formula in my personal cloud drive. Locked. Encrypted. Password protected with a key only I knew, Grace's birthday and the name of our childhood dog. He thought he could mass-produce it without me. Sell it. Claim it. But without the proper synthesis technique, which I never documented fully, he was holding a blueprint without instructions. Still, I was out of a job. No health insurance. No income. And Grace's condition was getting worse. She had been in and out of the hospital for months. The seizures were more violent now. I had moved back into our parents' house after Dad passed. Mom had Alzheimer's and was in a facility nearby. I was juggling caregiving, job hunting, and wondering if all those years in the lab meant nothing. Then, a week after my firing, I got a call. It was from Maya, one of the younger researchers at Valence. Quiet, sharp, and always careful not to rock the boat. She whispered through the line, like she didn't want anyone to hear her. "He's trying to replicate your work. But it's failing. The test trials are bombing. David's losing it." I felt a flicker of satisfaction, not revenge, just truth settling in. "They need you, Eli," she added. "But he'll never admit it. He's pretending the setbacks are just delays." I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. I could watch them crash and burn, or I could take back what I built. But I couldn't just barge in. I needed leverage. Something that would make not just David, but the entire board, take notice. And that's when the idea hit me. A week later, I emailed the FDA. Not to report them. Not yet. I asked to register an independent biotech startup. One focused on neurological diseases. I called it GraceLife Labs. And I applied for a patent. Not just on the drug, on the entire synthesis process. Every molecule. Every unique step. All under my name. I still had all the files. All the test data. Everything. But before the approval could even go through, I got another call. It was Maya again. Her voice was shaking. They just announced the drug at a conference. Claimed full success. It's everywhere. Stock prices are soaring. David's name is all over it. And your name? It's nowhere. I felt a wave of heat behind my eyes. He had done it. He had stolen my work. And the world was applauding him for it. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because David Carlisle forgot to check one little thing. And he was about to find out. The day after the board meeting, I didn't hear a word from anyone. It was like I had been erased. No one made eye contact with me in the hallways. Emails went unanswered. Even my keycard suddenly stopped working for certain areas of the building. I felt like a ghost in the very place I had helped build. I spent hours trying to figure out if there was a way back in, a way to show the board the truth. But I wasn't even sure what the truth was yet. What was John hiding? Why had he been so quick to erase my name from everything? Out of desperation, I called Carla, an old colleague and friend from the legal department who had quietly resigned months ago. She had always been sharp and careful, and if anyone knew what was going on behind the scenes, it would be her. When she picked up the phone, I didn't even get a chance to say hello. She simply said, "You found out, didn't you?" My heart sank. Found out what? Carla sighed. John isn't just cutting people out. He's rewriting the entire origin story of the company. He's already started filing new patent claims under his name. I was speechless. She continued, "He's trying to wipe the board clean. And you're the biggest piece of the puzzle he needs gone." Carla agreed to meet me in person that evening. We chose a quiet diner off the interstate, a place no one from work would ever show up. She brought a thick file of documents. Emails, patent drafts, meeting transcripts. She had been collecting them since the moment she noticed strange activity months ago. My hands trembled as I turned each page. There it was. John had systematically altered records to make it appear as though I was never involved in the creation of the drug. He had scrubbed my signature off the earliest drafts and replaced it with a forged digital copy of his own. "This is a lawsuit waiting to happen," Carla said. "But you need to act fast. Once these documents go to the next phase of approval, Your name might be gone forever. I was furious, but also deeply hurt. How could someone erase years of my work so casually? But I didn't have time to feel sorry for myself. I needed to fight back. And I needed proof, the kind that couldn't be faked. That night, I went to my old home office and pulled out every scrap of my work. Old notebooks, prototypes, emails printed out and filed over the years. I even had voice memos from meetings where I brainstormed the drug's formula with the original team. Slowly, piece by piece, I started building my own case. But I knew that wasn't enough. If I took this to court, it would be months or years before any real action happened. Meanwhile, John would continue climbing the ladder, maybe even secure deals overseas. I had to make the board see the truth now, before it was too late. The next morning, I booked a flight to Chicago, where the annual Pharmatech Expo was being held. Our company had a massive booth there, and John was set to give a keynote speech about the company's groundbreaking drug. I wasn't invited, obviously, but I didn't need an invite. I just needed 10 minutes of his speech. Enough time to take the stage and show the world the truth. As I packed my suitcase, my phone buzzed with a message from Carla. "You sure about this?" I replied, "It's not just about me anymore." But what happened at the expo would change everything. Forever. Because just as I stepped onto the convention floor, I saw him. And he wasn't alone. I froze. The silence in the room after those words felt heavier than anything I'd ever felt. Fired. After everything I'd done for this company. For him. My mind raced. I didn't even get a warning. I just stood there, with the box of my things in my arms and a letter in my hand that said I was being let go, effective immediately. No severance. No explanation beyond company restructuring. I walked out of the office that day without saying a word. But something inside me had already started to burn, a quiet, determined fire. This wasn't the end. I wasn't going to just disappear. Back at home, I sat on my couch and stared at the ceiling. The company I helped build. The drug I created. And now I was nothing to them. I started replaying everything in my head. Every late night, every missed birthday, every sacrifice. But then, I remembered something. A file. A document I had drafted long ago when we first started working on the drug. It had all the details, the tests, the components, even the design idea. And one important thing, the patent. I had registered the initial formula under my name before I officially joined the company. It had been a precaution, something I did just in case anything went wrong. But over time, I had forgotten about it. Until now. I rushed to my old hard drive and plugged it into my laptop. There it was. The digital copy. With my name. Date stamped. I checked the official patent database. Still active. Still mine. A smile crept onto my face. They had fired me without even realizing I legally owned the most valuable asset they had. But I didn't act immediately. I needed to be smart. I started contacting old colleagues, ones I trusted. Quietly. Carefully. Some were shocked, others were angry, and a few offered to help me figure out the next move. I learned that since my departure, things were already falling apart. The new CEO had started making big changes. Ones that didn't sit well with investors. I waited. I watched. And while they scrambled to cover their mistakes, I got in touch with a legal team. Not just any team, a powerful, experienced group who had dealt with corporate theft cases before. I showed them my documents. My patent. They were amazed. One of them said, "You realize, with this, you technically own everything they've built off that drug. They're profiting off your property." I nodded. I know. We began crafting a legal response, careful not to reveal everything too soon. Meanwhile, rumors swirled in the industry about my firing. Other companies started reaching out to me. They wanted to know more. And one in particular, a major pharmaceutical rival, wanted a meeting. I agreed to meet them in New York. We sat in a quiet office, overlooking the city skyline. I shared part of my story. Not everything, just enough to let them know I wasn't out of the game. Their offer was better than anything I expected. Funding. Resources. a chance to develop a new drug line. And most importantly, a chance to fight back. As I flew home, I looked out the plane window and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. But just as I landed, I received a message from one of my old colleagues still inside the company. "You need to see this. They're about to make a huge move. Something that could ruin everything." I opened the attachment. And what I saw made my stomach drop. The day the news leaked, everything changed. I was in my garage, tinkering with an old chemistry kit I kept for nostalgic reasons, when I got a flurry of texts. At first, I thought someone had died. But when I opened the messages, I realized it was something else entirely. "Ethan, you seeing this? Check the news. Dude, your name is all over Twitter." They really thought they could get away with this. My hands trembled as I grabbed my laptop. There, on the front page of several major news sites, was a headline that made my heart race. "Best-selling drug linked to fired creator, legal trouble ahead for Pharmatech." Turns out, someone had gone digging. A blogger with a surprisingly large audience had published a detailed exposé about the entire situation. My firing, my role in the drug's development, and most importantly, the fact that I still held the patent for one of the core compounds. It went viral within hours. The company tried issuing a statement to contain the fire, but it was too late. Investors panicked. Shares plummeted. The CEO, who had strutted around like a king just days before, suddenly vanished from the media spotlight. But I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because I knew what Pharmatech would do next. They'd come after me legally. Hard. And I was right. 2 days later, I got served at my house. A thick envelope. Inside, a lawsuit. They claimed breach of contract, intellectual property theft, defamation, and several other charges that made me feel like I was reading a fantasy novel. I sat at the table for an hour, just staring at it. This was it. The war had begun. But here's the thing. They forgot one little detail. I had documentation. Hundreds of files, all time-stamped and verified, proving my work. Email threads, lab notes, meeting recordings, you name it. The company's own legal team had signed off on many of them. And more importantly, I had people. Over the years, I hadn't just worked hard, I'd built friendships. Researchers, assistants, even mid-level managers who remembered how I treated them with respect. How I stayed late to help, mentored interns, or quietly paid for someone's emergency when their insurance failed. And now, they were lining up to testify. I hired a lawyer named Rachel, a sharp and fearless woman known for taking down big pharma in court. When she read through my documents and heard my story, she leaned back and said, "They picked the wrong guy to mess with." The trial date was set. 6 weeks. During that time, the company tried to discredit me in the media. Anonymous tips, edited videos, all kinds of noise. But I stayed quiet. Let them talk. Because I had one last move they didn't see coming. And I was about to drop it. Hard. The night before the trial, I sat with Rachel in her office, going over our final prep. "Are you sure you want to show them this?" she asked. I nodded. It's time. And when the courtroom doors opened the next morning, I walked in with confidence. The CEO was already there, looking pale. He didn't know it yet. But I was about to ruin him. When I stepped into the courtroom that morning, it felt surreal. The same company that had thrown me out without warning now sat across from me, looking rattled. The new CEO, Daniel, was present with a lawyer at his side. He didn't look smug this time, just confused and nervous. The judge reviewed the documents submitted, patent ownerships, contracts, internal memos. Everything pointed back to one truth. I had created the best-selling drug. And I had full rights to it. More than that, the company had violated the original licensing agreement I had put in place before the merger. Daniel leaned forward, whispering harshly to his lawyer. I could tell from their expressions, they hadn't seen this coming. The courtroom grew tense when my lawyer revealed the final piece. A clause in the licensing deal that stated if the company terminated me without cause, they would forfeit rights to use the compound. Not just the formula, but the brand, the name, the distribution chain. Everything. Gasps echoed. The judge looked surprised. Daniel's face drained of color. But it wasn't over. The judge ruled in my favor. My patent rights stood. The company had to stop production immediately and pay damages for unauthorized use. They'd violated a binding agreement out of arrogance and carelessness. When I walked out of court, the press was waiting. My story had spread. Headlines were everywhere. Scientist wins back drug empire. CEO fired creator, now pays the price. I wasn't just awarded damages. Investors pulled out of the company's stock overnight. Their value plummeted. A new board was installed. And yes, Daniel was fired. But the real win? I launched my own pharmaceutical startup. I hired kind, talented people who had been stepped on like me. We didn't just rebuild. We reimagined the industry with empathy and respect. In less than 2 years, our new drug pipeline was booming. Patients trusted us. Investors came running back. And I never looked back. Daniel, last I heard, was consulting for small firms, none of which came close to what we built. I learned something powerful. When you create something with heart, no one can steal your worth, not even a CEO with a fat title. And me. I kept the formula. I kept the mission. And I kept my integrity. Because in the end, one little clause changed everything. Subscribe now for more videos.